Welcome back to our channel World of Royals.
Prince Andrew would fly off the handle if we've not opened the gate for him in time, or if we've stopped one of his guests because we've not got the right ID or we haven't been given any information of who they are. It would be verbally abusive. Shout, swear, yeah, just really rude individual.
Picture a grown man in his 40s, not a drill sergeant, not a CEO under pressure. A prince screaming at the housekeepers who cleaned his bedroom. Not because they broke something. Not because they were careless. Because a stuffed animal ended up in the wrong spot on the bed. Hold that image. Burn it into your mind. Because everything that follows, the lies on national television, the settlement, the arrest, all of it leads back.
And this, I think, is what is totally frustrating members of the royal family. He has always had a sense of entitlement. He's always been convinced by his royalness.
To that same moment. A man who genuinely believed the world existed to serve him.
A young lady turned up, probably about 22, 23 years old, said she was here to see Prince Andrew. He just came in about half hour previous, so we knew he was in, but the footman wasn't answering his phone. There was no way of us contacting anyone up there, so we just politely said to the lady, "We're really sorry, we can't let you in at the moment because we can't confirm you're expected." So she said, "Oh, shall I ring him on my mobile?" So we said, "Yeah, fine." So she rang Prince Andrew on her mobile, and we could hear him clearly. He said, put an officer on the phone. So my colleague took the phone and he said, "Listen to me, you fat lardy ass. Let my guest in immediately, I'm going to come down there." Everyone heard it. The lady went red, apologised, and we just let her in. So after that, obviously, those sort of issues we had with him, we would just let women in. Didn't ask questions because we just did not want the...
Surrounded by a household trained, from the very beginning, to never push back. Paul Page was no ordinary employee. From 1998 to 2004, he served
Ghislaine Maxwell. She was a very frequent guest of Prince Andrew. She was a regular visitor.
As an armed protection officer inside the Royalty Protection Command, 6 years stationed within Buckingham Palace itself. He guarded the Queen. He guarded Prince Philip. And he guarded Prince Andrew.
I mean, complaints were made about him. You know, he was a rude, obnoxious, horrible individual, but no one was going to take a complaint to the royal household because he's the Queen's favourite.
Of every royal he was assigned to protect during those 6 years, he is unequivocal about one thing. Andrew was not difficult. He was not demanding.
On this particular occasion, went into Prince Andrew's bedroom and his apartments, and on his bed was 72 teddy bears.
Was, in Page's own words, simply the worst. Verbally abusive, explosively unpredictable over the smallest things, and shielded by a system that ensured his behavior carried.
My inspector showed me a laminated card, which is in the side drawer of one of the bedroom cabinets, of a picture of these teddy bears, all in situ.
Absolutely no consequences. Before you dismiss Paul Page as a bitter ex-employee with a grudge, stop.
He said the reason for that picture is that the maids have to put them back exactly like it's in that picture. He said if they don't, he shouts and screams.
Because what makes him impossible to ignore isn't his personal opinion of Andrew. It's the granular, verifiable specificity of what he describes. Page detailed a bedroom inside the palace containing somewhere between 50 and...
She says she met you in 2001. She dined with you. She danced with you. You bought her drinks. You were in Tramp nightclub in London. And she went on to have sex with you in a house in Belgravia belonging to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Didn't happen. I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
And 70 stuffed toys, arranged on Andrew's bed according to a laminated diagram. A printed, laminated chart, showing precisely where each bear sat. If the maids disturbed a single one during routine cleaning and didn't restore it to the exact position shown in that chart, Andrew would not complain. He would scream. Here's the thing about...
She was very specific about that night. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. It was almost impossible for me to sweat.
About a laminated teddy bear diagram. Nobody invents that. It is not the kind of detail someone fabricates to settle a grudge or win a dispute. It is the kind of detail that exists in your memory only because you stood in that room and saw it with your...
Why would you remember that moment of sweat?
Because he had a police officer picking up golf balls. I just couldn't believe that a police officer was acting as a ball boy. So obviously that stuck in my mind. You know, it was a hot day, it was a hot summer's day. I was sweating, you know, and he was whacking golf balls. And if you're wiping your brow, what are you wiping off your face? As far as I'm concerned, he was sweating, and that's what
Your own eyes. You cannot make that up. You can only report it. In November 2019, Prince Andrew sat across from BBC Newsnight's Emily Maitlis and delivered what would quickly become one of the most dissected.
At the moment, again, it's his word, and that's all he's got. But there are no witnesses to confirm that, so that is just what he is saying.
And ridiculed television moments in modern British history. Faced with allegations that he had danced closely with a young woman at a London nightclub, a woman who would go on to accuse him of far more serious crimes, Andrew offered a defense so specific, so medical, so carefully constructed that it was clearly rehearsed well in advance. He said he couldn't sweat. Andrew's logic was straightforward.
I got myself into a lot of trouble when I was a Royal Protection Officer. I basically was dealing in shares. I became a millionaire while I was a Royal Protection Officer in my own right before I got in trouble. And I basically started investing police officers' money as well. And it came to a point where I was just hemorrhaging money. It started off well, we were making money, and I was dealing with millions of pounds, and the stress got to me, and I started losing money. So I turned to fraud. I went to court, I was held to account for my actions, and I spent 6 years in prison.
If he genuinely suffered from a condition preventing him from sweating, then he could not have been the man she described sweating on that dance floor. It would collapse her account entirely. But Paul Page watched that interview, and his reaction was instant. He had personally witnessed Andrew's sweating during his years inside the palace. So had other members of staff. In Page
2009 wasn't really relevant to today's situation with Prince Andrew. Over the years, what I said has now become relevant, and so the press started using bits and pieces from what I'd said. So I thought, at the end of the day, it's what I said. I've got to stand by what I said because it's 100% true. So I'm on no revenge mission. I just feel that Prince Andrew has got a case to answer on all levels, including bullying. And I suffered at the hands of Prince Andrew. Young girls suffered at the hands of Prince Andrew, his maids, other police officers, and members of staff. But none of this has ever been looked into because people were too frightened. And also it's important for the public around the world to understand, just because you've got a title, and as I said previously, it does not mean that you are a good person.
His own words, the claim was not just inaccurate, it was absurd. This is the
I do think there's a huge scandal here, and it's only going to get bigger. It's not just about financial and sexual misdemeanors. It's, I think, a national security scandal, and we're getting hints of that already.
Detail that should unsettle you most, and it has nothing to do with perspiration. Here's the mathematics of it. Andrew made that sweating claim on national television in 2019. Paul Page had already been...
Well, it took me 4 years of research, and I approached about 3,000 people, about 300 talked to me. And it took a lot of time to get a lot of these people to go on the record, but I think a lot of them were pretty appalled by the way that Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson had operated, had got away with it, had been protected by the palace. And I suppose I then got these senior diplomats and naval officers to talk, which was great.
Talking about Andrew's behavior publicly before that moment. Staff inside the palace knew the defense was laughable from the second it left his mouth. And yet not...
I've just been able to reveal today that she was actually in touch with Epstein for years afterwards, staying in his flat.
Not a single institution. Not the BBC, not the palace press office, not one major broadcaster. Put Page on camera to say what every one of his former colleagues already knew to be true. It took years. It took ITV.
You faced an unprecedented wall of resistance on the part of the Yorks in your pursuit of the truth, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I mean, I approached them originally to see if they would cooperate, not because it was not going to be authorised, but because I felt it was important that they should be allowed to help shape the narrative.
So you approached Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson?
Yes.
It took 60 Minutes Australia physically flying a production crew to London. It took independent platforms willing to give a platform to a man the establishment had spent considerable effort discrediting, because Page did not come without complications. In 2009, Paul Page was convicted of a £3 million property fraud. He served prison time. And the moment that conviction was on record, the palace and the tabloids had everything they needed.
And my publishers got letters, legal letters, warning them that they were being watched, what they put in the book. I was told that my social media would be monitored, and that their attempts were made basically to intimidate me.
Not to disprove what he said, but to make sure no one had to. Here is what the palace has never done in all the years since. They have never directly denied the teddy bear arrangement. They have never denied the screaming at staff. They have never issued an on-the-record rebuttal of the sweating claim. They attack the messenger.
I had a meeting with Sarah Ferguson. She decided not to cooperate. She decided, in fact, to tell all her friends not to talk to me.
Methodically, repeatedly, and they leave every single message untouched. Paul Page is a former protection officer with a criminal conviction. In the court of public opinion, he is easy to dismiss. But what happens when the person making the same essential argument is a Cambridge-educated historian with decades of archival research, best-selling books, and a legal team behind him? Dr. Andrew Loney spent 4 years researching and writing the rise and...
I think the worry is that there are more damaging revelations to come, which there are. I have a lot of material which I'm putting into an updated paperback in the summer. I know that there are much more to come out from the Epstein revelations. We're beginning to see them today. And I think we will now get more victims coming forward, and I think more people coming forward with stories. And I think this thing will begin to unfurl. It's going to be really bad.
Fall of the House of York. A book that charted the finances, the scandals, the relationships.
I hoped he could silence everything, but of course you can't, because he is guilty on so many levels. And that is the great problem for the royal family. He is a permanent time bomb.
And the connections of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, including their long association with Jeffrey Epstein. The book became a bestseller in the United Kingdom. Critics described it as meticulous, built on hundreds of interviews and freedom of information requests. Then came the American...
When he decided to do the interview with Newsnight, he clearly rehearsed how he was going to explain the photograph in the park and everything, and went into that interview with clear determination to lie, not only clearly about his relationship with Epstein, but also his relationship with Virginia Giuffre and the rest of the things. And what is remarkable is looking at his face as he lies. It is the face of a professional con man, a professional liar.
American edition. And everything changed. Loney sold the U.S. rights to Simon & Schuster's Gallery Books imprint for a reported advance of $250,000. Early editorial feedback from the publisher was positive.
This is the Duke of York. This is the royal family, willingly going onto TV and lying to the world about his relationship. And there was no compulsion for him to do it. We are really approaching, in my view, that along with Prince Harry and all the rest of it, a major constitutional crisis.
The material was strong. The manuscript just needed shaping. Weeks later, without warning and without providing the full 90-day revision period his contract guaranteed, the publisher terminated the deal entirely. They called the manuscript unacceptable. No detailed explanation. No revision process. Just termination. Loney is now pursuing several $100,000 in damages through legal action and has stated publicly that the decision effectively destroyed his window to break into the American market. Consider the sequence carefully. A book sells strongly in the UK. The largest publisher in the United States acquires it. Their own editors confirm the content is credible and solid. And then, weeks before it reaches print, someone pulls the plug with no substantive explanation. Loney has also stated that archives repeatedly blocked his access to documents relating to Andrew and Fergie, citing security concerns or claiming materials were simply unavailable. He says the York family instructed friends and associates not to speak with him. He says ABC News in America was allegedly warned it would lose royal access if it ran a
What's your take on everything with the Prince Andrew interview?
Well, do you know what? I didn't know him that well. Andrew wasn't in my satellite, and I've never really known him, and that's the honest truth. I feel sorry for the victims of this paedophile.
Story on Andrew, and the story was quietly dropped. Is there a signed letter from the palace saying, "Kill this book"?
No.
But when archives block you, the family blocks you, a broadcaster walks away, and a publisher terminates weeks before publication. At some point, you stop asking whether there's a pattern, and you start asking who benefits from keeping it in place. Tom Bower is not a man who softens his language when powerful people are involved. He has built an entire career producing books that the famous and the influential would pay a great deal to suppress. The Beckhams, Meghan Markle, King Charles himself.
I spent 5 years trying to get access to this sort of information, and I think committees in the House of Commons should be looking at a proper investigation into Andrew's time as a trade envoy, because he was helped and abetted by a whole series of people. I would like a lot of people who wouldn't talk to me for my book.
If you've embarrassed yourself at scale, there is a reasonable chance Bower has a chapter about it somewhere. On the subject of Andrew, Bower has been blunt to the point of legal risk. He has described the Newsnight interview as a masterclass in professional deceit, the performance, he said, of a man who walked into that studio already planning to lie. He has warned publicly that the combination of Epstein files, forthcoming memoirs, and Virginia Giuffre's own account could trigger what he considers a genuine constitutional crisis for the British monarchy. But the line that actually went viral was not any of that. It was a single sentence, dropped in...
And I love Queen Elizabeth. I suspect that she was trying to protect who we know to be her favorite son.
I think that's why nothing really severe did happen to him when the Queen was still alive.
Interviews and panel discussions, almost offhandedly. Bauer said, "This is the chapter the palace hoped I would never write." That line detonated across YouTube. Commentary channels picked it up and ran for miles, some speculating about hidden content involving Andrew, some involving Meghan, some involving connections that haven't surfaced publicly yet. Whether that chapter was formally removed, quietly watered down, or is still sitting in Bauer's private files, nobody outside his office can say with certainty. But the signal was unmistakable. There are pieces of Andrew's story that people
We've known about this since 2011. Yes, he may have denied it to the Queen, but they certainly knew in the palace, and they monitor everything that goes on. And so for 14, 15 years, there has been a conspiracy of silence, and there's been a conspiracy by many at various levels not to tell the truth, Ireland.
Serious positions of power have worked very deliberately to keep buried. And Bauer is saying he found some of them. That is what connects all three men, Page, Loney, and Bauer. A protection officer, a historian, and an investigative biographer. They share no publisher. They share...
Now I think brother to brother, the king has had to say, "No more, Andrew. You are not doing this to our family."
No agenda. They have never coordinated their accounts. And yet all three tell the same underlying story, that whenever someone got close to the full, documented truth about Prince Andrew, something pushed back. A career was damaged. A book was pulled. An archive was locked. A broadcaster was quietly warned. You can dismiss one person. Dismissing three requires real effort. Dismissing a documented pattern requires something else entirely. Paul Burrell spent years inside Buckingham Palace as Princess Diana's personal butler. He witnessed firsthand how the institution made its decisions, how it managed scandals, how it protected its own reputation, and how it consistently prioritized the survival of the monarchy over the well-being of the individuals inside it. Burrell has described, at length, a culture in which closing ranks was not a crisis response, it was standard operating procedure. He wasn't Andrew's butler. He wasn't present at Royal Lodge for what happened there. But what makes his perspective directly relevant to this story isn't evidence about Andrew specifically. It's what he describes about the system itself, the same system that Paul Page says shielded Andrew from consequences after every staff complaint. The same system that Andrew Loney says deliberately blocked his access to historical records. The same system that allegedly reached out to ABC News and suggested they reconsider running a critical story. Diana confided things to Burrell about the pressures of that world, about the way the machine operated. And years before Andrew's legal problems became public knowledge, Burrell was already warning anyone who would listen. The royal family had a habit of burying things beneath the carpet, until the weight of what was buried made the carpet impossible to ignore. He did not predict Andrew's arrest. He didn't need to. He predicted the system that made that arrest eventually inevitable. And at the center of that system for decades was Queen Elizabeth II. She stood by Andrew publicly until the final years of her life. After Newsnight, after the allegations, after the civil settlement with Virginia Giuffre, she stripped him of official duties, yes, but he remained at Royal Lodge. He retained access to the family. By every credible account, he remained her favorite son. The monarchy did not create the architecture of protection around Andrew in a single moment. Biographers and journalists have been documenting it for years. Restricted access, blocked archives, discouraged broadcasters. The Queen did not build that system. But she allowed it to operate around her son for longer and with more latitude than almost anyone in her position would have. And then she died. And the protection died with her. King Charles stated publicly that the law must take its course. Prince William reportedly pushed behind the scenes to permanently remove Andrew from any proximity to the institution. The arrest came. Search warrants were executed. Hard drives, laptops, phones, and documents were seized from Royal Lodge and Wood Farm. The National Crime Agency was involved. Legal experts began calling it the most significant crisis for the monarchy since the abdication of 1936. And somewhere in a stack of old interview recordings and published books for very different men, Paul Page, Andrew Loney, Tom Bower, and Paul Burrell arrived at the same quiet realization. They had been saying this for years. Page was branded a liar and dismissed because of his conviction. Loney's book was killed before it could reach American readers. Bower was labeled sensationalist and attention-seeking. Burrell was written off as a palace gossip. None of them are laughing now. But not one of them is surprised either. Because the story they told, consistently, independently, across years and continents, was always the same story. A man who believed the rules simply did not apply to him, protected without interruption by an institution that, for decades, quietly agreed. That story has now become a police investigation. What is on those seized devices? Nobody knows yet. But this much is clear. For 20 years, the people with the closest proximity to Andrew's world tried to speak. And for 20 years, the machine built around him made certain that no one was listening. They called these people liars. It turns out they were simply early,